In my first devlog, I created the groundwork for a simple tank game I was making in Unreal Engine 5. I had a tank that players could control by moving and shooting. I created a missile that players could shoot from the turret tank, and I created enemy tanks. The next logical step for me was to have the enemy shoot at the player. Thankfully, I planned for this when I was creating my base tank class, because now I can call the same fire missile function for the enemies that I used for the player. To do this, I basically just called that function in the enemy class when the player got too close, and boom. Well, not boom yet. But this then meant that the enemies will be firing missiles at me every frame when I was too close. To fix this, I added a timer to the fire missile function in the base tank class. This way I could use it for both the player and the enemy. Next, I wanted to use some of the assets I had, so I started dragging them out to the level and arranging them. This gave me a pretty good idea of the scaling I wanted for the level, and how to iterate with modular designs with separate tile assets. But not gonna lie, even making a small road end like this took a while for me to make. I wasn't sure if I was doing it wrong or if there's a better way to do it. But then while I was googling it, I saw Unreal has something called Chaos Destruction Mesh, and I thought it'd be really cool to have a breakable environment in the level. Like you shoot at a wall and it explodes and you can go through it. So I took a bit of time to explore that and create a few breakable objects like the boxes and the watchtower. This took me about a day to understand, but in the end I couldn't figure out how to get the collider meshes to turn off when I go over them, otherwise the tank just gets stuck. So I have a lot of it in this test level, but in the final level I decided not to have breakable objects. I'll save that for something much cooler. Now, everything was going pretty well and I hadn't pulled out too many clumps of hair at this point. So I moved on to adding movement to the enemy tanks. I wasn't too sure how to do this, but my first thought was to have them move forwards and backwards like they were patrolling the area. That way it's predictable for the player to know where they will go. But I wanted to do more than that. After some research, I saw that Unreal has something called an AI perception component, and I thought that I could use it. It works by allowing actors in your scene to perceive and interact with the environment using senses like sight and sound. So if I were to go behind the tank and shoot a missile, that would be a sound event and it would let the enemy actor know my location. I added the component to my enemy class and tested it out, and guess what? It was pretty much the same as what I already had. The only difference was now I had some fancy debug UI showing me all the information that I wasn't even going to use. It didn't feel like too much of an upgrade for me though, so I looked into using splines for the tank's patrol path. This way I could have them follow a much more complex route, but when I tried it out, this happened. Yeah, I don't know what the hell was going on with this. I even tried adjusting the speed the tank was moving along the spline and the spline's position, but it still kept looking like the Flash charging up a lightning strike. After losing a couple of days to this, I realized the best idea is my initial one, to just have a simple patrol path that it can follow. I give it a distance, it moves that much, it rotates a certain amount of degrees and goes back. And that's exactly what I implemented here. So the tank's going to move forward about 5,000 units, turn 90 degrees and repeat. That way it will go in a square. So at this point in the project, I felt like I had pretty much completed all the main mechanics that I wanted to do. The only thing left was to actually design the level for the game. And I'll be honest, I just wanted this game done. So I created a new blank level in Unreal Engine and started adding my assets in. I added a floor asset which I expanded out and added some walls. I built a little box and I got the idea to have that as the player starting area. I wanted to have a wall that the player could break down with the missile to exit that area and then fight the enemy tanks. That way it would be a safe area for the player to explore the controls and then they could exit when they felt ready. I haven't done a ton of level design in the projects I've worked on, but I have dabbled in it. And the main reason I don't like it is because it seems too time consuming. You have to like manually drag out each asset to the level, arrange it where you want. Like the best you can hope for is to just duplicate it over and over again and then move on to another object. I don't know if I'm just doing it wrong and Unreal has an easier way, but for now this is just the way I have to do it. If there's an easier way, please let me know in the comments. As you can see here, I'm trying to cut up a wall asset into multiple parts, that way when it's hit with a missile, it'll crumble. I wanted to create a wall that the player could shoot with the missile and have it explode or just disappear. That way the player can exit through that gap onto the main part of the level. And it was actually working very well. Like I said, the main issue was, once that object breaks into smaller objects, they still have colliders on them, so the tank would sometimes get stuck on the rubble. And that would entirely depend on how it broke apart when you hit it with the missile. There was too many factors that I couldn't control. And like I said, I decided to skip all that and have a singular piece of wall that the player would shoot at. So the more I began to build the level, the more I realized that this area kind of looks like a small prison. Like the story could be you're a small tank stuck in this small prison area with other larger vehicles, and there's enemies that have surrounded you, and you're the only one that could fit through this small gap in the wall, and your goal is to escape that area, defeat all the enemies, and release the NPCs. Next, I wanted to tackle the UI. I wanted the players to have a maximum of 2 missiles, each with a 2-second cooldown. So after you shoot one, there's a 2-second cooldown for it to reload. So you can shoot 2 missiles, one after the other quickly. But then it takes 2 seconds for the first one to reload again, and then it would move on to the next one. I figured the best way to show this was to have 2 missile icons in the top corner, and have them turn grey or black once the player shot the missile. So I took a screenshot of the missiles in Unreal and imported it into Adobe Illustrator and then traced it over with shapes. That way the graphic would look exactly like the missile in the game. Then I made sure to have a version of the missile that was all black to show in the UI once the missile was shot in the game. Adding the missile to the UI was quite simple. I added an image object to my UI canvas and then changed the appearance of the brush in the control panel to the PNG I just created. Then I created a binding for the brush to control the appearance of the image based on the shots. But before all this, I added a current shots variable to the player class which tracked how many shots the player had left after they just shot. And then in the UI binding, I just checked if the current shots was equal to or above 1 and 0, and then showed the regular missile PNG or the blacked out one, depending on that value. It was about this time that I was getting a really bad memory leak that was crashing my editor. Like I could run the game normally, but then after about 20 seconds the frame rate would drop and my PC fans would go crazy and then it would crash. After googling the errors I was getting, it said it was relating to my GPU, but that meant nothing to me because I didn't have anything that was graphically taxing on my machine. I did a lot of digging and saw that there were some console commands that I could use in my editor to see what parts of the game were running, like stat FPS and stat game. And as you can see, blueprint time was going absolutely crazy when I was running the game. That meant that something in the blueprint was being called too many times. I retraced my steps again and I went to trusty old Google and I realized that I had hooked up my player UI to the event tick node in the level blueprint instead of the begin. No wonder that shit was crashing. I plugged it into the begin node and it worked normally. This was one of those bugs that took me like 3 days to fix and it made me want to quit the whole project, but I will finish this damn game if it ends me. Next, I wanted to add a bit more polish to the game, so I added particle effects for the missiles, explosions, and smoke trail. I forgot to mention it before, but for the health system, I used Unreal's built-in damage system which handles applying damage to the actors. I then just took that value and added it to a progress bar in the player's UI. At this point, I felt like the game was 90% done. I just had to add some more elements to the game to make it look more polished and full. Luckily, the asset pack came with a lot of items, some of which were buildings, so I added them to the level and varied their sizes and colors, and then arranged them in a pattern that didn't look like it was repeating. This helped fill out the level a bit more and make the edges of the playable area not feel like it's floating on the platform. One of the last things to do was to add a winning and losing state to the game. I had it whether the player defeats all the enemies in the level or the health goes to 0, it will show the same menu screen prompting them to either replay the game or quit. After that, I added some more enemies and props to the level, and then I was done. This project was supposed to only take me 1 month to complete, but it took me 2. But I still got it finished, which is what really counts. And I learned a lot of how Unreal Engine works, and I'm quite excited to make some more projects with it. I've linked the game in the description if you want to check it out, but I'm gonna warn you, it's pretty terrible, not gonna lie. But now I'm already trying to work on my next project, and hopefully that will be a lot better than this one. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe for more game dev content. Okay, bye!